Hey, this is War. Classic is now only a few days away. I'm sure you're as excited as I am. I can barely function. Part of the first few days and weeks of this launch is going to be groups competing for world firsts. One of these world firsts that people are going to be super interested in getting is the clearing of Molten Core. Now, this clearing of Molten Core will be nothing new for many of these groups doing it. They'll be returning to Classic either from vanillas or from private servers where they've done this sort of stuff before. They've already reached amazing clear times on Molten Core, but will anyone be able to clear it in the first week? What does clearing it involve, and is it even possible? So I'm going to have a talk about these important elements clearing Molten Core in week 1. There's the attunement to the core, there's a Hydraxian Waterlords, there's Tranquilizing Shot used on the boss Magmadar, there's Fire Resistance, there's Consumables, and then there's Raid Makeup. I will put timestamps in the comments so people can jump around as required. I won't be covering anything about leveling quickly to 60 or best in slot lists. There are a ton of excellent videos on these, and there's plenty of guides by some super smart WoW scholars. I'll link these guides in the comments as well so you can get an idea of what's required. Let's get into it. Attunement to the Core. So this is an optional attunement quest called Attunement to the Core. You pick the quest up from an elf named Lothos Riftwalker. At level 55, you'll find Lothos in an alcove at the end of the giant chain in Blackrock Mountain. After a brief discussion with Lothos, he will ask you to go and collect a core fragment from deep within Blackrock depths and return it to him. Once complete, you'll have access to a portal next to Lothos, which will take you directly into MC. You don't need to complete the attunement, and you will still be able to enter MC. However, you and your raid will need to travel all the way through BRD first. It's a tedious journey, particularly if your raid wipes inside MC and you have to run back. I'd recommend just picking up the quest as part of the leveling grind to 60. You can complete the attunement as part of a BRD run, trying to improve your gear. That way you can get both tasks done at once. Simplifies your attempt at a week 1 MC clear and is super simple. I'm sure you'll see every attempted MC in the first week doing exactly this. So next up we have the Hydraxian Waterlords. Hydraxian Waterlords are a group of water elementals living off the coast of Ashara. Predictably, the Waterlords are sworn enemies of Ragnaros, the Fire Lord, who we intend on killing. The reason they're important is that they will be able to provide us with an item, an Aqua Quintessence, which we will use to douse the 7 runes spread throughout Molten Core. It is a requirement that these runes are doused before we're able to defeat Ragnaros and his Major Domo, so getting our hands on the Aqualescence is a must. Aqua Quintessence also has a 1 hour cooldown, meaning 7 raid members will need one, and it's BOP, so no sharing. To get your hands on Aqua Quintessence, 7 raid members will need to be honoured with the Waterlords. Now if you know anything about rep grinding in Vanilla or in Classic, you'll understand that getting honoured is not a simple feat. Optionally, these members can also complete a related quest chain which can be obtained at level 55 from Duke Hydraxis himself. These 7 are probably going to be the first to reach 60 since they will have some grinding in their future. Now this part can get pretty emotional. Exactly how emotional it gets depends on how layering and dynamic respawns will work in Classic. If you can break into smaller groups, find your way onto separate layers, and dynamic respawn is working like it has been in the beta, then your elemental genocide will probably be much less painful than predicted. You can even stop 1,000 reps short if you wanted to on the grind, if it's really hurting your feelings, since you can collect the rest in MC, but then you will have to travel all the way back to Ashara to collect the Aqua Quintessence, but it's your life. If you do choose to do the quests, you'll end up getting a choice of okay fire resistance rings, which may take some pressure off healers once we actually get into the MC boss fights. So prior to hitting 60, I should mention that your 7 dedicated players should start killing Desert Stormers and Desert Rumblers, gaining both experience and reputation with the Waterlords. For the sake of completeness, I'll show you the quests if you do choose to go that route. You'll start by killing 15 Desert Stormers and 15 Desert Rumblers in the quest you receive from Duke Hydraxis. If you're already honoured by this point, you'll probably be fairly familiar with these mobs. For the next part of the quests, you're required to cure and then murder 12 Discordant Dirges and collect their braces from Eastern Plague Lands. You'll return to the Duke and then you'll take your buddies to head to UBRS, where you'll have the opportunity to extinguish Paragard Embassier and loot his eye. Though it's not required for the quest, I suggest you continue on a clearance of UBRS now that you're here, for the chance at some much needed gear after when we get into MC. Head back to the Duke and take a quest to kill a Molten Giant, Firelord, Ancient Corehound, and Lava Surger in MC. You'll need to take a raid group to do this, and all these mobs appear as trash in the early part of MC. Once they're dead, go back, turn in the quest before returning to MC to kill 4 of the bosses. It's not a huge imposition since the entire reason why we're doing this is to kill the bosses in MC. Return to him once you're dead, turn in the quest, and collect your rings. Really, this whole quest piece is a bit of a stuff around, but there's the information, use it how you may. Within MC, there's a boss named Luciphron. Luciphron drops an item called the Tome of Tranquilizing Shot, which allows one lucky hunter to learn the Tranquilizing Shot ability, which will be used against the second boss, Magmadar, to remove his Frenzy ability. Normally this would be a fairly straightforward process of having multiple hunters rotate through Trank Shot with each Frenzy. However, since we have only killed Luciphron once, we will only have one Trank Shot available, so how do we manage this? Once Magmadar frenzies, he will gain 150% attack speed, meaning that he's going to increase the damage on your main tank. This doesn't affect the rest of his ability, doing AoE damage to your melee group, however it will mean that the main tank will be under additional pressure. Given the main tank will be under-geared, this will be the moment to pop cooldowns and the moment to have an additional main tank ready to take over if required. However, this shouldn't be a huge problem as healers will be able to heal through the fight. The fight is not especially difficult in normal circumstances. With only one Trank Shot, as long as the tank continues to use cooldowns, shield block for instance if they're warriors so that they aren't getting repeatedly crushing blowed, I can't see a problem with tanking Magmadar in the gear that you will have at this time. Fire resistance. Under normal circumstances, except for the main tank, your raid won't really need fire resistance. The damage is spread out over time and is easily healable, either with bandages or with small lower ranked heals. That said, with under-geared groups and lacking most consumes, it won't hurt to have any extra fire resistance you can, as long as it doesn't reduce the effectiveness in your key role, such as healing for healers or DPSing for DPS. The fights requiring fire resist on the main tank will be the fire elementals before Geddon, Baron Geddon himself, and Ragnaros. It will help on Magmadar since that will be a sketchy encounter, though it's not necessary. As mentioned earlier, I won't cover individual fights here, however I will link relevant videos in the description. Fire resistance has a cap of 315, so be aiming for your main tank to get as close to that as possible, with a few easily obtainable buffs and some dungeon drops. If luck happens to be on your side, you might even get to that cap in the first week. There are some super simple sources of fire resistance that you're going to go for as a no-brainer either on Horde or Alliance. One of them is the Fire Resist spell from the Scar Shield Spellbinder. It will be found in UBRS just at the entrance on the left. They'll cast this fire resistance buff. If you mind control them, you can put it on your entire party. That'll give you 85 fire resist. In the tooltip here, it only says it'll give you 2. That's incorrect. We'll give you 85 for an hour. That buff will obviously be removed on death. You also have the fire resistance totem and the fire resistance aura, depending on whether you're a Shami or a Pally, and that'll give an extra 60 fire resistance, which is pretty good. That means 145 fire resistance without even having a particular item on. It's a good start. There are a number of items you'll be able to get from leveling through BRD or from UBRS that'll really boost up your fire resistance. Examples being Draconian Deflector for your tanks, Wildfire Cape for your tanks, Molten Fist, ideal for Resto Shamans, and then Cape of Fire Salamander is good for anyone really that needs that bit of extra fire resistance. These dungeons should be a priority for you anyway, getting as much pre-raid bis as you're able to before you face the Molten Core bosses, and getting a few of these fire resist items on the side will really help your healers out when you get into MC, and ensure that they have the longevity to get through the entirety of fights with the reduced DPS that you'll have from under-geared players. The 2 rings on the right hand side are from the Hydraxian Waterlord's quest chain. Being able to get them will be a matter of time and priority. The important thing to remember about gearing for fire resistance is that you don't want to take away from your class's primary role, so that's not so much an issue for tanks, though you do want to make sure that you're still maintaining a high armor cap and you're maintaining high threat, aside from bosses that don't do physical damage, such as Baron Geddon, which is a different matter entirely. For every other class though, you want to make sure that you can keep your DPS high and you can keep your healing up with a bit of fire resistance on the side to try and minimize big spikes in damage or minimize damage to the entire raid over time from AoE spell. As with any endgame content in Classic, whether it's PvE or PvP, consumables are as important to success as choosing the correct gear. However, in this case we don't have luxury of time to farm, and it's likely that some consumable recipes won't even have dropped on the server yet when a first week MC is being attempted. There are, however, a few consumables that will definitely be easy to get and certainly should be used for anyone attempting MC at any time, not just in the first week. The first one of these is the rewards from a series of Blasted Lands quests. The quests are called A Boar's Vitality, Rage of Ages, and the Salt of Skorpok, and they'll get you these consumables, which last for 60 minutes and increase a stat by 25, whether it be strength, agility, or stamina. There's also one for spirit as well, The difficult part about these is that they are unique, so you can only have one in your inventory at any one time. It means if you die, you'll have to go back and get more of them. However, you can have one of each, so you can take a strength and a stamina if you're a tank, for instance. However, that limits you to, if you do die, you have to switch to the other buff, which is unfortunate, or you can just go back there. However, being time limited, that may not be such an easy thing. The next one is the Elixir of Superior Defense and the Greater Stone Shield Potion. Greater Stone Shield Potion is a drop, however it's a fairly high drop rate, and the Elixir of Superior Defense is one that you can simply buy. It's also quite easy to make, so if you do have people that are leveling professions at the same time, you may be able to make some of these for your tank. It'll be particularly important on certain fights with high physical damage, which, as I said previously, you can look at the overview of fights in the comments, and you can find out where that's required. We've also got the Greater Fire Protection Potion. While that is available as a drop, it may be more difficult to make, as you will require some items that are fairly difficult to farm. And given the limited time, you may not be able to farm enough of these up in the time you've got. Now, I know that some organizations will have separate groups entirely leveling to 60 very quickly in order to do that farming. Now, that's a super exciting level of organization, and I'm very impressed with anyone who's doing such a thing. The rest of these are very easy to gain access to and will certainly give you significant benefit. We've got Mighty Rage Potion, which is not too difficult to make, and the recipe can be bought from a alchemy trainer. We've got Superior Mana Potion, likewise, same deal with that. We've got Elixir of Greater Intellect, which will help greatly for your DPS. Elixir of Shadow Power, particularly if you're heavy on Warlocks. Elixir of the Mongoose, which is in my opinion the probably best bang for your buck of any potion that you'll get, or any consumable really that you'll get in all of Classic. You got the Elixir of Greater Agility, only really useful if you can't get the Elixir of the Mongoose for whatever reason. You got the Monster Omelette, which is a good cooking recipe, and that's available to buy from a cooking trainer. And then you've got the Flask of the Titans, which is extremely unlikely that you'll have this available to you prior to the end of week 1, given that it's a rare drop, as well as requiring significant ingredients, as well as needing to go to the alchemy labs to actually create it, but who knows. Using consumables both in week 1 MC or in raids in general is more of a requirement, given the buffs that you get from even a few of these consumables is far more significant than the buff you'll get from picking, say, the right piece of pre-raid bis over the wrong piece of pre-raid bis. The difference they make is huge. Just have a look at any of these, even the simple Elixir of the Mongoose is adding 2% critical hit and an agility of 25. Imagine if there was an item that you could get that had an extra 25 agility and an extra 2% crit over, say, the boots that you're currently wearing. That would be the difference between MC level gear and max level gear. That's huge, and you can get it from one tiny potion. So putting the effort in and getting these makes a huge difference to your raid's effectiveness, and looking at the people who do get these and who use them demonstrates to you as a raid leader or as a guild leader who is putting in the effort and who cares about not wasting other people's time, because that is essentially what you're doing when you are getting consumables for a raid, is that you're showing you're not willing to waste other people's time by putting in the maximum amount of effort you can. Now at the end here, I will talk briefly on raid makeup in endgame of Classic World of Warcraft. This is a potentially contentious topic, as it's been discussed at length on many forums over the past 15 years, and I've engaged in discussions myself. I won't speak directly to the idea of one raid configuration to rule them all. I'll just give some of my ideas that I've observed over time on how you can set up your raid on Alliance or Horde to get the most out of the people you've got. I know that sometimes we look for templates or a best solution, and they do exist, sort of. Like a best in slot list though, I feel like it's lazy just to give out a template, because it doesn't encourage people to learn, and it doesn't encourage people to develop their own ideas on the topic, which may well be better than mine. If I'm giving you a template, it comes with all the problems that I've got, or if someone else is giving you a template, it comes with all the problems that they've built into it. If you know what to look for and you know how to organize your own raid, then you can come up with something yourself, and you're not limited by the bias of the people that you got it from. So we'll go through some things to consider and how that can inform your raid, how it can be organized. And remember that ultimately you're not raiding with classes, but you're raiding with players. And the players you pick are far more important than the classes that they play. So with all that in mind, keep in mind that your tank will be undergeared, and therefore will be able to generate less threat than they might later on in Classic. Now, what that means is I wouldn't be surprised if we do see some of the guilds that are going for a world first Molten Core, or going from Molten Core within the first week but using a Druid tank. They naturally have higher armor, they've naturally got higher hit points. However, they don't have the ability to parry or block, but that could be mitigated within Molten Core by the fact that they've got lower armor, or higher armor, sorry, and higher health, meaning that they're putting less stress on your healers, who will, because they're also undergeared, have lower mana, won't have as much plus healing. It also means that they'll be able to last longer in a fight where your DPS will be lower, because they don't have their plus to damage or their plus crit and plus hit that they'll be getting later on in Classic, which is so important to them keeping their DPS high. So don't just think of warriors as the only tanks you'll be able to take, but consider those druids as well. Also, make use of gear-independent abilities such as totems and auras, so it doesn't matter how well equipped a shaman or a paladin is, their totems and auras will be doing the same thing. So spreading those shamans out throughout every group and giving Wind Fury totems and giving Manatide totems will make a big difference when your DPS and healers are all undergeared. You'll be maximising the potential that they can get out of the gear that they have got while leveling. This low DPS will also risk exhausting your healers, so if you're trying to make up a raid for MC within the first 7 days, consider taking mana efficient healers such as shamans with their raid healing through chain heal. You can take paladins, ensure that priests are able to make good use of the 5-second rule and put them on a rotation so that some of them are healing while some of them are not, ensuring that they can regenerate as much mana as possible before moving back in and starting healing again. That's just about communication and about organisation, something that if you are attempting a week 1 Molten Core shouldn't be too foreign to you. I'm going to end this video here with the question of whether or not a week 1 Molten Core is even possible. In my opinion, it certainly is, and I think we'll definitely see week 1 Molten Core being done by a number of organisations or guilds. I think we'll see some pretty good races against each other to get that done. I think it'll be pretty cool to see. I think we'll see some unusual strategies. I think we'll see some pretty hardcore gameplay. Acknowledging there will be some groups that share accounts or that have a large number of members also leveling to 60 quickly to try and support with consumables and whatnot. Outside of that, I think we'll see some pretty good times anyway. I have heard that there has already been a first week Molten Core clear on a private server called Elysium. I can't confirm that myself. If it's true, good work to them. However, for my mind, this is Classic, and this is where it counts, so good luck to all those who are attempting it. I'll be leveling a warrior in a melee cleave group with a goal of 4 days played to 60. I'll be streaming that on Twitch, and we'll leave a link in the description. Let me know in the comments if you think a first week MC will be possible, and if not, why not? You can also come say hi on my Discord, let me know what you think of a first week MC, and until then, I'll see you guys next time.